You are Locked On Mets POSTCAST. Part of Locked On Sports New York on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
The New York Mets fall in Game 2 of their 3-game series with the Toronto Blue Jays behind a struggling David Peterson and an offense that has gone missing once again. Welcome into the Locked On Mets postcast here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. I am your host, Chris Schubert, and welcome into the first of what is hopefully many here in the remainder of the 2024 season of Locked On Mets postcast. Welcome into a new format here on the Locked On Mets podcast feed. Don't worry, Ryan's not going anywhere. You're just going to hear my voice here for these postcasts on the Locked On Mets podcast feed and on our Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. Like I said, I'm Chris Schubert, lifelong Mets fan, Mets podcast host in my own right, and I am here with you every single day that the New York Mets are in action playing baseball, and we will recap it here live. And not a lot to go over, really two main things in David Peterson and the offense going missing once again. And so we will dive into that here on the postcast. But first, got to tell you about FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And the NFL season is in full swing with Week 1 wrapping up last night. Speaking of that, Locked On Jets had a Jets postcast last night. You can hear those on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel as well. But okay, let's rip the Band-Aid off. Let's talk about this 6-2 loss to the Toronto Blue Jays in the second of what is a pivotal series in September for the New York Mets. And the place to start is with the starting pitcher, that being David Peterson, struggling for what was the first time all season. He has been absolutely electric since joining this rotation on May 29th. Entering tonight, the Mets had won 14 of David Peterson's 17 starts. And in those starts, he has looked awesome. In his last start in particular, had all of the swing and miss stuff that you would like to see from David Peterson, him reaching his highest potential, getting those 11 strikeouts. This performance tonight, the rearing of the ugly head of what we have seen from David Peterson in the past. And I think most Mets fans kind of saw this coming at some point. They were kind of wondering throughout the course of what has been an incredible run for David Peterson, when would we see the David Peterson of old? When would we see that regression to the mean? When would we see maybe him struggle in a start? And unfortunately, it all came to an end tonight, and he had one of those poor starts that we've seen him have in the past, and it all came back to him not having command. His pitch count was up early. I think he had like 48 or so pitches after the first 2 innings. Did not have command of any of his fast stuff that he was trying to locate high in the zone. And in the early part of the game, he was able to kind of work around it, specifically in the first inning, getting a key double play after the Mets had spotted him a run in the first half after Toronto couldn't put together a double play. The Mets take an early lead, and you start to feel like maybe this is going to be one of those games again where the Mets are just going to get all the breaks that went their way, right? That happened a lot in the Red Series. It has happened a lot during this stretch that this team has been on, right? The 9-game winning streak, everything that we've seen since the All-Star break. It has been just a lot of breaks going this team's way. And in the first inning, Toronto has a tailor-made double play, and they just throw it away. And that opens up the door for Brendan Nimmo to get a blue pit. You feel like, okay, here we go again. We're going to hand the ball to David Peterson. He's been really good. He's been really solid. Things are breaking our way. We get a run early, and it just never got out of first gear for David Peterson. He did not have the command of that fastball, could not locate it up in the zone, could not just find a rhythm, find something that he could consistently get over the plate to work him into advantageous counts. And it all kind of unraveled there in the third inning. You had an error and a double that led to 2 runs early for Toronto to take the lead, and they never looked back. A 2-out triple, a 2-out RBI single, and before you could even blink, it was 5-1, and that was all she wrote in this baseball game. The Mets did not stand a chance coming back in this game, and we'll get to that a little bit later on when we talk about the offense being non-existent. We tried to maybe spur on something with JD Martinez being the thumbnail for this YouTube video, and maybe we'll try to do that going forward, try to get somebody on the thumbnail to potentially be the good luck charm for that particular player. Was not the case for JD Martinez tonight, but we will get into that a little bit later on here in the show. And so you spot them the 5-run lead, or the 5 runs to make it 5-1. Peterson doesn't really have it over the first 3, and he's able to kind of find himself for an inning there in the fourth, didn't really have it in the fifth, and the Mets ultimately turn it over to the bullpen. And I want to credit one person in the bullpen in particular, that being Huascar Brazoban, because he gave the Mets some really important outs in tonight's game, because this is one that the Mets never really felt like they were able to come back in. And he was able to give this team 2 innings of relief to save some of the big arms in this bullpen, to give those guys days off, because the Mets are going to go to their A-plus relievers. They're going to go to Edwin Diaz a lot. They're going to go to Phil Maton a lot. They're going to go to Reed Garrett, Jose Butto. These guys are going to be asked to get really important outs in high leverage situations. And in a game that goes sideways here, instead of needing to use 4, 5, maybe 6 relievers in a game, Huascar Brazoban giving you 2 innings out of relief, allowing you to bridge to Adam Young and Adam Ottavino. That's a really nice job out of Huascar Brazoban to save this bullpen, because tomorrow, little afternoon baseball, the Mets need to win series here if they're going to keep pace with the Atlanta Braves, who I believe are winning as we're doing this post show. The Diamondbacks and Padres are in action as we are doing this live postcast. So we don't know the results of those games right now as we sit here doing the show. But if you want to keep pace, you got to win series. You have to put yourself in a position for these games to matter at the end of September when you take on the Braves. You have 3 against the Brewers. You need to make those last 6 count. And so winning series is the name of the game. And if the Mets are able to find a win tomorrow, unlike they were able to find tonight, it'll be 5 straight series wins. So that's still on the table for this team. But again, the tip of the cap to Huascar Brazoban. It's not going to be a headline garnering thing, but I think it deserved a little love here tonight for what he was able to do to give this team 2 innings and kind of bridge that gap from what was a bad Peterson start. The final line on Peterson, 4 1/3, the 8 hits, the 5 runs, 4 of them earned, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. Just didn't have it. Didn't have the A-plus stuff that we had seen since coming back off the injured list on May 29th. Just has not been the guy that this team has expected of him over the last couple of months, and specifically probably his last 6 or 8 starts, where he has been absolutely electric for this team. That last start in particular, it happens. This is not a writing off of the work that David Peterson has done this year. This is not to say that David Peterson is not a reliable member of this rotation. This is not to say that David Peterson is unable to go out in his next start and be exactly the pitcher that he was in his last couple of starts and the way he has been all year. He is still that pitcher. He still has that arsenal at his disposal. He just didn't have it tonight. That's baseball, Susan. That's unfortunately the way sometimes it goes over the course of 162. It just so happened to come at a really bad time for this team in September, where you just feel like every single one of these games means a little bit more, even though they don't. They all count the same. They're all 1 out of 162, but they just feel a little bit more amplified here in September against the team that you probably should comfortably take 2 out of 3. Now you're putting it all on tomorrow's performance for Sean Manaea in the finale of that 3-game set. So again, a bad start out of Peterson, did not have the command. He just has to go out and get him next time, and I'm sure he and Jeremy Hefner and the pitching staff will work on the things that did not work tonight and get him ready for his next start. So I do not want this discussion of his poor performance tonight to be an indicator of how we feel about him moving forward. This is still a guy that can help this team. He is still one of the 3 best pitchers, at least starter-wise, this team has down the stretch, and he is going to need to give them performances like he has had all season long if they are going to hold on to one of those 3 wild card spots. There was a lot, I believe, made of the lineup decisions that Carlos Mendoza made ahead of today's game, so we will get into that here on the other side. You know, one of the things I love to do, and it's hard to do during baseball season, is I love to go to concerts. When I'm not maybe at a baseball game or maybe at a football game during the NFL season, now that has started out, love to go to concerts. Well, the Mets have an off day on Thursday. There's no Jets game for me to cover here for Locked On Sports New York. So I find myself going to a concert. And you know what you want to do? If you want to go to a baseball game, you want to go to a football game with football starting up, or if you want to go to a concert, you're going to want to check out the Gametime app. They've got a new feature called Gametime Picks that make getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. It cuts out all the fluff. It filters it out, so it only shows you incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I'm sure you have made a decision to want to go to an event, and you go to all these different places and you try to find tickets, and it's hard to figure out what's the best seat. Where do I want to go? Gametime, they take all that out for you with the Gametime Picks option for you in the app. They make it easier to save on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, all-in pricing. You can toggle that feature so you show all of the stuff, fees, everything up front. There's nothing that's going to surprise you at the checkout. They've got seat views. You can get a panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. They've got the lowest price guarantee, or Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. They've got the ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB. That's LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. So let's talk about this bullpen. Let's talk, or this lineup, I should say. Let's talk about the lineup that Carlos Mendoza put out there today, because I believe there is a lot that was made of two decisions in particular that Carlos Mendoza made when putting together this lineup for the second game of the series against the Toronto Blue Jays. One being DJ Stewart getting the start in right field, and I think the other being Eddie Alvarez drawing in at second base. And I think it's easier to start with the Eddie Alvarez decision. And I mentioned this on Twitter, and a cheap plug, you can follow me on Twitter at @ChrisSchubert_. And after you're done consuming Locked On Mets POSTCAST, if you want to follow me over there, you'll get more Mets thoughts. You can also, if you're listening to this in the podcast feed, I already know you are a subscriber to the Locked On Mets podcast. Ryan Finkelstein has you covered on all of the next day type stuff for this team. So you're going to want to check that out each and every day in your podcast feeds. But the Eddie Alvarez decision, I think, is the easier one for us to discuss, because it all boils down to Jeff McNeil being hurt and being out for the entirety of the season. And Jose Iglesias is a great story. He has been a great revelation for this team. The spark, the OMG, the defense, him finding his ability to hit that he hadn't had in the last couple of years, the impact that JD Martinez has had on him, talking about the weighted bats, and that's really helped him find himself. He is a great story. He is the embodiment of what the 2024 New York Mets have been. Fun, energetic. They just enjoy playing baseball. Things just go their way and they have fun with it. And it just brings a life and energy to baseball that sometimes is lacking over the course of 162. And Iglesias, I think, showed up at the right time for this team. That being said, Jose Iglesias, I don't think is a player that the Mets feel confident in or comfortable with being an everyday player down the stretch here after all that they've asked of him already throughout the course of the season. They need him to still be able to bring that energy, to be able to bring that excitement, to bring that defense, to have a little bit of the bat. It's cooled off a little bit in the second half. They still need him to be that spark plug that he has been for this team all year. And I don't think they're going to be able to do that by running him into the ground, playing at second base every day with Jeff McNeil being out for the remainder of the regular season. So they need to find somebody, and they need to have some option to give him a blow, to give him a rest, to allow him just innings off of his feet. He can be a pinch hitter late. He can come in for defense late, but you can't ask him to play 9 innings every single day down the stretch here. I don't think that's a good use of his skill set. I just don't think it's good roster management considering where this team is at. So ergo, you get Eddie Alvarez in the lineup today. I have no problem with that. There's probably some people out there that think that this should be Luis Angel Acuna, but unfortunately, I just don't know if the role that Eddie Alvarez is going to play on this team is one that is best suited for Luis Angel Acuna. You want prospects of Acuna's caliber. This also goes for Drew Gilbert. If you're going to bring these guys up and you're going to insert these guys into the team to bring that energy, to be a spark plug like Jose Iglesias was, they've got to play. They have to be out there at least semi-regularly. And listen, the Yankees across town are going through this. They waited as long as they could to call up Jason Dominguez because they wanted him to be able to play. And they call him up, and he's playing every day for them. That wouldn't be the case with Luis Angel Acuna. That wouldn't be the case with Drew Gilbert. You call Acuna up, and he's in the Eddie Alvarez role. That's not a great use of his skill set. That's not a great use of him being on this team when you're going to give Jose Iglesias maybe one day off every 7 or 8 games. You need somebody that's exactly like Eddie Alvarez to provide you that type of respite, that type of replacement that you can put in there. Yeah, you're sacrificing a little bit of offense, but you feel really good. He turned a big double play tonight for the team early in the game, looked good, handled himself well. Again, you're not going to get a ton from him with the bat, but you are going to be able to throw him in there and get Jose Iglesias off his feet. So that one makes sense. And the DJ Stewart one, look, Carlos Mendoza has pushed a lot of buttons throughout the course of the year, and I mean that in a good way. He has pushed all the right buttons in terms of rotating his outfielders. Bader, Marte, McNeil when he had him available, Nimmo, Taylor, now he's got DJ Stewart. He has found a way to rotate these guys through to keep them all fresh. right? He has found ways to get these guys off their feet, use them late as defensive replacements, just find a way to keep everybody involved, keep everybody fresh, but get them the necessary rest that he thinks they are going to need throughout the course of the season. And I think this tonight, putting DJ Stewart in the lineup, a lefty against Chris Bassett, you feel like this is an opportunity to maybe get Marte off this onto the sidelines, to get Taylor, who's a right-handed bat, off to the sidelines. You get Jesse Winker in there. You put him up in the 2-hole because you're facing a righty in Chris Bassett, and then you put DJ Stewart in the lineup to hopefully bring a spark to the team as well, because he's done that in the past. So again, I understand the frustration maybe sometimes with, Marte maybe not being in the lineup, or Iglesias not being in the lineup, and just some of these minor lineup decisions. And again, I think it's totally fair and totally warranted to discuss the lineup and to discuss some of these decisions on a day-to-day basis. But overall, when you look at the big picture, Carlos Mendoza has pushed a lot of the right buttons to get this team to this point. And so I think it may be a little bit too overly critical to get on him when you can very clearly see what he's trying to do here with this team, because they have, I think it's 17 games after this. They've got 6 against the Philadelphia Phillies. They've got 3 really important ones against the Atlanta Braves, and they potentially have 3 really important ones against the Milwaukee Brewers, depending on how they play. Those are the big dogs still left on this team's schedule. So after winning the first game of this series against Toronto, if you use night 2 as an example of, let's get some guys some rest. Let's use this as an opportunity to get DJ Stewart in the lineup because we're facing a righty and I'm not going to play him against lefties. An opportunity to move Jesse Winker up in the lineup because, again, he's been hitting a really hot bat right now. We can move him up in the lineup because we're facing a righty in Chris Bassett. We know he crushes righties. He's not going to play against lefties. That's the kind of stuff that he's been doing all year, and I don't think he's going to change that here late in the season. He is going to continue to stick with what has worked for this team, what has put them in this position to play these critical games here in the month of September, where every single one of these games, there's, we're having heart palpitations. We're scoreboard watching every pitch. We're living and dying with every single moment of these games because of the work that this team has done up until this point. So I get it. I understand you wake up on September 10th and you go throughout your day and you get the Mets lineup and you go, this is a playoff team playing a playoff type series, games they have to win. And Eddie Alvarez, who's been on the team for 5 seconds, is now drawing in as the starting second baseman for a really important game on September 10th. I get it. But when you take that step back and you look at the big picture, you see what Carlos Mendoza is doing here. And I think you have to give him the benefit of the doubt because, again, he's pushed a lot of the right buttons throughout the course of the season. I'm not so sure there were any buttons that Carlos Mendoza could have pressed tonight to get the offense in going. And this has been a problem over the last couple of days. And yes, they had a 9-game win streak that put them in a position to be a wild card team. But the offense the last couple of days has been struggling. And we will get to that here on the other side. Oh, the NFL season is back, and I've been doing the Locked On Jets postcast, did one last night after the Monday Night Football. Football is back, and I can tell you, without a shadow of a doubt, I've had my phone with me a lot of the time, and I have been on FanDuel looking at lines, looking at player props, looking at these games each and every day in the lead up to week 1 of the regular season. And I can promise you that every single day I will be doing the exact same thing in the lead up to week 2 of the NFL season with the NFL being back. And you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Well, we have something a little different for you this time. Now through September 22nd, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Could you imagine betting $5 on FanDuel, getting 3 weeks free of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV, and being able to follow all your bets, to be able to bounce back and forth between all those games? Oh, I got this player prop. Boom, we're going here. Oh, we've got this over. We're going here. That is the offer that is in front of you by FanDuel. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel at any time. Just visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Shout out to the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. Well, I'm one of the hosts here covering you on the Mets side of things, obviously, and the Jets side of things. But you got Jay Berman covering you on the New York Giants side of things. So if you're a Mets Giants fan, he's going to have you covered on Sundays with that. He's also got you covered for the Knicks when the Knicks get underway. And if you are a Jets fan, I've got you covered after each and every New York Jets game on the Locked On Jets side of things. So do us a favor and subscribe if you're new here. If you're catching us for the first time, which most of you are, we just started this project here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. So do us a favor, subscribe, comment, like these videos, turn on the notification bell so you know when we go live after each and every game here in the New York market. And we'll have you covered for those live instant reactions after your New York sports teams play. Like I said, so give us a subscription there and turn on that notification bell so you know when we go live. All right, let's talk about the offense, which has kind of gone missing over the last couple of days. They got bailed out in the first game of this series. They gave away the lead and then immediately got the lead gifted back to them in the first game of this series with the Toronto Blue Jays bullpen just giving it away with a pass ball and a wild pitch leading to the 2 runs that put the Mets in front. And the tail end of the Red series kind of had a very similar feel to it, where the Mets kind of got away with stuff and they were able to kind of scratch and claw their way to a win. They had a 4-0 win in the second game of that series against the Reds. The finale was a struggle offensively, 3-1. It was a struggle in the first game of this series offensively, and it is a struggle tonight for this team offensively to be able to score runs. They just did not have it in the second game of this series. I had, JD Martinez as the thumbnail, hopefully potentially having a thumbnail, not a curse, but just the thumbnail being a confidence boost. Potentially, if you get on the thumbnail, you have a big game. We can kind of make it a thing here on the show. Well, that wasn't the case because JD Martinez went 0 for 4. So we're going to try it again here for the first couple days here on these Locked On Mets postcasts. But I don't know if it's going to stay, because if it does become a curse and the people we put on the thumbnail maybe have poor performances, we're going to have to change it up. We're going to have to do something different. But just a night where nobody could have it, had it going offensively. Mark Vientos, 0 for 4, 2 strikeouts. Believe both of them were looking on pitches high in the zone. I obviously remember the first one in the game. I believe the second one was a very similar outcome, where a ball up in the zone. He did not agree with it, but a called strike 3. There was a lot of that tonight for the New York Mets. Pete Alonso, 0 for 3 with a strikeout, got hit by a pitch and had a little funny moment with Chris Bassett about that after he got hit on the upper arm there. But you have, no hits from Vientos, no hits from Alonso. You get the 1 hit from Nimmo, but nothing from JD Martinez. Alvarez, Francisco had 1 hit, but struggled in some key at-bats early in the game. Lindor was only 1 for 4. They just could not put anything together. And this team is going to go as far as 2 things take them. The starting pitching staff. I believe if you get a quality start, 6 innings, 3 runs or fewer from your starter, this team is going to have a really good chance to win every single game that they play the rest of the way. But the other part of that equation is they need some level of consistency. And we know that this team, unfortunately, has been streaky throughout the year. We saw it in the first half, the 0-5 start to the year, the 11 games below 500. Then we saw the complete opposite end of that spectrum that has led us to this point. And they don't need to be what they were last week, where they won 9 in a row. They don't need to be that in order to get in the playoffs, but they need to be somewhat close. They need to be closer to that end of the spectrum than they need to be to what we saw in the first half of the year. And that's going to go as far as Francisco Lindor takes them, as far as Mark Vientos takes them, as far as Pete Alonso takes them. I mean, those 3 guys are the 3 guys that I think you look at to provide a lot of the power surge that you're going to see from this lineup. You hope that JD Martinez can just give you a hot week or 2 here down in the stretch. Brandon Nimmo potentially turning a corner, another hit with runners in scoring position today, where he's kind of thrived throughout the season despite his struggles. You'd like to see him heat up a little bit. They just need somebody to get hot, and it kind of been Francisco Lindor a lot of the time throughout the course of the second half. You hope that it could be somebody else, Pete Alonso, playing for a contract, so you hope that it could potentially be him to parlay that into some big money, whether it be from the Mets or someplace else. But they need somebody to step up. They need somebody and some help to step up if this team is going to be able to take it over the top and close the deal on being the 3rd wildcard team, or potentially even better if they're able to close the gap on the Diamondbacks and the San Diego Padres in this series. That is going to do it for us here on this Locked On Mets postcast. A disappointing performance from the New York Mets tonight. The offense nowhere to be seen. A struggling performance from David Peterson. You hope that he can right the ship the next time he is up. But it is a series finale tomorrow against the Toronto Blue Jays. It is Sean Manaea, who's been one of the best pitchers on the Mets all year, in potentially the thing you signed him for. And with the way he's pitching this year, the thing you're probably going to ask him to do a lot is, we struggled last night. We couldn't find a win. Kind of need one today. You're our guy. You're the stopper. You make sure that this doesn't become a losing streak. You're the guy that makes sure we get back on track going into an important series against the Philadelphia Phillies. Like I said, I'm Chris Schubert, the host here for your Locked On Mets postcasts here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. Appreciate everybody listening to this in the Locked On Mets podcast feed. Appreciate everybody who is out here in the YouTube streets with us watching this live after each and every Mets game. You can follow me on Twitter at Chris Schubert _ for my thoughts on the New York Mets. But please subscribe to the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel so that you can get instant reaction to the Mets, the Jets, the Giants, the Knicks. Maybe you want to check on what the Yankees are doing potentially. You've got it all covered here on the Locked On Sports New York YouTube channel. So that is going to do it for us here on this post show. Appreciate you all making this your first listen after the Mets game tonight, and we will talk to you all next time.